Back before Google, LinkedIn, and cell phones, I stumbled on recruiting. I always knew I wanted to create a recruiting firm that created an incredible candidate and client experience while allowing me, as well as my team, an opportunity to live an abundant life on our own terms, to have the freedom to work where, when, and how we want, and to be rewarded financially for a job well done. It has been a long, sometimes messy marathon, but wow, have I learned a lot about recruiting, branding, sales, scaling, leadership, overcoming challenges, and most importantly, overcoming myself. I absolutely love our industry, and this podcast is for you, my fellow recruiters ready to learn, grow, and push yourself to your next level. Let's do this together. We are talking about all things recruiting. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of All Things Recruiting, and I am so happy to have Stephanie Hitchins here with me. Welcome, Stephanie. So glad you're
Thank you.
here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. And we've just been chatting and having fun, and we had a
Mhm.
little bit of technical difficulty, but we are
We're
alive,
we're here. We have made
alive and well.
it.
So, all right, great. Stephanie, like you and I met, it's probably been maybe 9 months or so.
Mhm.
And I'm going to let you tell the listeners a little bit about you, but you have just been amazing, just amazing human and an amazing
Mm.
person to partner with. So I'm going to let you just do a little intro and then we'll go from there.
The pressure.
Yeah.
You're like an amazing human, and let me tell you about myself. No, yeah, like where do I begin? Connecting with you was actually kind of funny because we have a little history that we didn't even realize we knew about. But
Right.
I was working with a client and he mentioned your name, and I was like, how do I know that name? And it turns out that you had been working with another company that I was previously employed by, and I knew your name. It had been brought up so many times, and our person that we connected with originally is Brett Gilliland, who is also an amazing human. But yeah, we connected, and it's been a super fun little experience of wait, I need you and you need me, and this is kind of fun. We can help balance each other. And in I have clients that need recruiters, and then you invited me to the podcast, and I feel so honored to be here. So,
Yeah. Yes. And I know that, like, I think what's so great for a lot of the listeners that are, listening to the podcast is that you're an executive coach and you
mm,
focus on that 7 figure and up
mhm,
business,
mhm,
doing leadership coaching and development. And I know personally when you are growing a small business and you reach that $1 million level, there's so many different layers and things that go on that I'm sure we'll talk about this, but you see it all the time. People can get stuck at that $1 million, plus. I know there's
mhm.
different stages, but tell me a little bit about like how you got started coaching in the first place.
Mm. So I have actually loved um I've loved teaching for quite some time, and I knew this is like we're going way back, guys. When I was a little girl, I used to grow up and say I wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't want to teach in a classroom. And I didn't really understand what was possible, right? But I just knew that's like what I wanted to do. And so as I got older, I ended up majoring in humanities with an emphasis in art history. It has nothing to do with teaching or coaching, but it caused me to think outside of the box, which is probably the greatest gift. I had to look at one image, and it was like, let's dissect the entire image. And actually, I use that all the time with my clients and their business. Let's take the problem, let's dissect it. So, what ended up happening is I moved to Arizona, and uh, I was employed by Infusionsoft, which became Keep, and I believe they've just sold to Thrive. So I was originally what was called a small business coach. That's what I was hired as. And I was coaching my clients to I would learn about their business and then I would teach them how to use a software to help them grow their business. But there were some missing pieces for me. I would hear their pains about their team members, and I was like, I know there's got to be support around this. I know there's got to be solutions, but I didn't understand how to coach. I hadn't developed that skill set yet. And so I had a client of mine say, "Hey, can you come? I'm going to attend this class that your company's putting on." And I said, "Okay, I'll go. I don't even know what the class is, but I showed up and I volunteered." And inside that classroom, they taught seven-figure businesses specifically how to navigate growth once you hit a million, how to get to 10 million plus. And
Mm.
you mentioned there are stages. And so I sat in that room and I was like, this is the missing piece. I even turned to the VP. I mean, this is a 500-person company. And I turned to the VP, who actually is Brett Gilliland at the time, or was Brett Gilliland at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, you're going to have to pry my cold, dead fingers to get me out of here. Like, I am hearing truth in this room. I know it's the missing piece. I know it works. I'm currently living it at the company. I was a practitioner myself. This wasn't just a, this is cool in theory. I hope it works. It was genuine. I was living it. I knew it. My leaders were doing the work that they were talking about. And so from there, I ended up applying to a position within that department of the organization, and then eventually, Brett decided to buy this portion of the organization and roll it out to stand on its own 2 feet. And of the team that worked with him, I volunteered as tribute. I was like, I want to come with you, you know. So then I helped him kind of build up his business called Elite Entrepreneurs. I love, 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 love Elite Entrepreneurs still to this day. And I love Brett. He's my mentor. But he actually was the guy who sat in the seat as the right hand to the CEO as Infusionsoft grew from 5 million to over 100 million plus.
Wow.
And the techniques and tactics that he put in place, that he deployed with the CEO, was very intentional. And because of that, he built a business teaching other people how to do the same thing. And the caveat is that he is building a group of entrepreneurs, a place where seven-figure businesses can go and learn in a classroom setting and in a group setting and masterminding, and it's so awesome. But I wanted the one-on-one experience, and
Yeah.
he and I was like, we need more one-on-one. He's like, no, we need to reach more people, and he's not wrong. I mean, what he offers, I believe in, and the path in which he offers it, I am in full support. I use his methodology to teach everything, but I also believed in that one-on-one. So he and I agreed to become supporters of each other, rally each other. And so what I do now is, after coaching over 200 businesses in all the years that I worked with him and doing this work with elite entrepreneurs, I learned how to dive into the individual businesses and help coach the mindset and help coach the development of the leaders. When you hit seven figures, when you hit a million, you said there's different stages, but you have to develop a new skill set. It's no longer just sell, sell, sell. It's no longer just market, market, market. We now are hiring people and we have to lead them in a way that they care about hitting the goals as much as you care about hitting the goals. How do we avoid high turnover? How do we get buy-in? How do we create loyalty? And you and I have talked about, and this is something that I can't say that I know for sure, but recruiters, you guys are great at finding people, but then what's the next step? How do you keep them? How do you maintain the relationship? How do you create that loyalty? And I'm pretty sure we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that today. But
Yeah.
that's how I got started. And I absolutely love what I do. I have so much fun doing it that sometimes I pinch myself like, man, this is my life. I get to
Yeah.
work with these companies. So thank you for having me today and
Of
trusting me
course.
here.
No, I have goosebumps because it is true. Like a lot of the listeners, we are recruiters. We love what we do. Most of us like stumbled on recruiting and we figured out that, hey, I can be good at this. So
Mhm.
we started recruiting and we started doing business development and we got really, really busy. And then we added someone else to our team maybe to help us. But it's kind of like that organic growth that most of us go through. And you get to that point right around $1 million where you're like, I need more people. I need more support. I need processes. I need,
Mhm.
all those things that when we first started out in recruiting, we probably didn't learn it from anyone. We just kind of like jumped in and kind of figured things out as we went along. But there's so much that happens. Like, what do you see for the clients that are at that $1 million mark? What are like two or three of the biggest challenges that no matter what the industry, you kind of see it like over and over and over?
Hey, this is a piece that, especially if you've been at a million for a significant amount of time. Like if you went from like 500,000 last year to a million, really fast, you aren't feeling these pains yet. You're still kind of in the marketing's, it's doing exactly what I needed to do, in sales is there's a bit of mastering that takes place in order to get to a million in the sales and the marketing arena. Now, when you get to a million, for the love, please do not stop selling and marketing. Okay,
Right?
that's
Yes.
not what we're talking about. But the step that you have to realize is your development as a leader, because your people begin to become a challenge. And
Hmm.
here's what I mean by that. You have likely been hiring friends and family. You maybe not as a recruiter. Maybe you went out and you found specific people, but you hired from a place of reactive state. I need somebody right now to solve this problem, right? Or I know you know how to go find people, so you probably pride yourself on finding people, but you may be finding them just according to the exact one little thing that you need them to do. I'm not sure, Sharon. This is where you're the
Mm.
expert
Yeah.
in the recruiting space. But the people issue, what happens is they're maybe rowing in their own direction, or maybe they're just like they're coming to you and asking you questions multiple times throughout the day, and you're like, I just need you to do your job. I don't get why you don't understand. Just do the work. And it could also be a lack of alignment. Like you just feel like you have to repeat yourself and nobody's really listening. And maybe there's distance. Like you're leading from not being in person. You're having to lead virtually, and that's like you've never done that before. What if you don't know the person? What if you've never met them, and you're in one state and they're in another, and they're doing this job, and there's just kind of some miscommunications going on. The other piece are some systems. And the systems piece isn't always technical systems, like I need a CRM to organize my stuff, or I need, this. The system comes down to, how do I hold my team members accountable to succeed?
Hmm.
How do I get them to care? What's the system to get them to care and to buy in to what we're building here in a way that they don't take my business and run with it and
Right.
betray me?
Exactly. So
How do
yeah,
we do
what
that?
how do we do that, Stephanie?
Sharon's like,
Because
I'm desperate. I'm just kidding.
no. But I
Yeah.
think a lot, I feel like a lot of the listeners, like, because I've been there. So
Mhm.
what you're saying, I'm like, I know that a lot of people listening are going to be like, totally, like, I totally get that. And I also think that we are great at finding the right people for our clients. Just like I was
Mm,
saying with technology, like, I'm great at finding technology people, but when it comes to my own technology, help. Like I need someone to come in and help me set up, my podcast equipment,
mhm,
etc. I can find a person, but I can't do it. And it's kind of like that with recruiting. Like I think that people that they recruit really well, they know how to find people for other clients, but then when it
mhm.
comes to their own hiring, it's almost like deer in headlights. Like what? Like I don't know how to like you
Yeah.
just
Where do I
forget. Like
start from? How do I?
yeah,
Yeah.
because it's all up to you and you're not getting, from your client, like, hey, this is what
Yeah.
we're looking for. So, how would someone, Stephanie, like, I'm just trying to think of like a good, like, push off point for someone that's
Mhm,
like, let's say they have been at that $1 million mark for a little while, which
mhm,
typically means they're probably like still in the business. So, they're wearing tons of hats, right?
mhm,
They probably have maybe one or two people either helping them or, maybe it could be like a virtual assistant. We use
mhm,
that, a lot of times to help with recruiting and fill in. But what are some things like when you're talking about, communication? Because I think that, and I'm sure you agree, a lot of the things that we're talking about, even the systems and the processes, it all comes down to like communicating your message and getting really
mhm,
clear on like, okay, this is where I'm at right now. This is where I want to be.
mhm,
How do you get not only like clarity, to tell the team, but like, what's that first step on getting clear on how to move forward to get to that next level?
This is a good question. And I can give you kind of a deeper version, which maybe we go into. Let's see how it flows, right?
Yeah.
There's also kind of the high level, which is just call out where you want to be a year from now, or even call out where you want to be 3 years from now. And I know it's going to be easy for you as the owner of the business to want to focus on revenue, but your employees don't care as much about revenue as you do. They want to make impact. So what's the heart-centered impact that you're going to be making? And what's the difference? So, like, let's just say you're locally hiring just in, we're using this example, just in, because you and I are in Arizona. So
Yeah.
let's just say you're the local recruiter in Arizona and you've only made a small impact and you are looking at, we want to impact X amount of companies or maybe X amount of hires just in our local region. And if we did that, how would it contribute and impact the community around us because you're elevating the standard of care. I mean, the standard of work. You're bringing people to,
Hmm.
you're aligning them to their jobs. I mean, recruiters can get pretty heart-centered on the work you do. You're not just finding a person for a company. You are asking an individual and a company to devote themselves to each other for a period of their life. And I always say this to all employees, you could do anything you want, and you're choosing to stay here and give years of your life to this company. Why?
Hmm.
Right? So it's the
Hmm.
same kind of idea as if we could get kind of heart centered on, man, what's the actual impact we want to make? What are the waves we want to make in maybe our community or the, general Phoenix area? Or, maybe it's that we want to do the Phoenix, just really conquer the Phoenix area and then step into Tucson. I'm obviously getting a little condensed here because I think recruiting can happen all over the United
Hmm.
States, right? But we're just kind of using the idea of, I don't know, can you recruit in other countries too? Are you able to do that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there are international recruiters. So,
Okay. So
yeah.
this is where I want to say on the high level, don't get so big and broad that in 3 years it's impossible to hit the goal. Like,
Hmm.
let's start, master a specific location, master a specific region, master the United States before you start going external. Does this mean we won't work with people outside of the country? No, we totally will. But we want to hone in, and there's a book called Essentialism by Greg McCune. Have you ever heard of it?
I have heard of that. Hmm.
Okay, so he
Yeah.
talks about, I'm gonna ruin it for
Yeah.
everybody.
In
No, I'm just
fact, I
kidding.
think I read it. It's been a while,
It's been
but
a
I
while.
think it's a
Well,
white cover. That's what I read.
yes, yes.
A white cover.
He talks about basically our essential energy, and when we're non-essential, there's all these little arrows coming off of a circle. And if you wanted, you could go find this image on the internet, right?
Yeah.
But it's
And I'll
this,
put
the
it in the show
circle. It
notes.
says, yeah, non-essential, and it has all these little arrows, and it's basically you saying yes to too much. So a non-essentialist makes incremental progress in every direction. So you're like feeling like you're not making a lot of progress because you've said yes to everything. Whereas an essentialist gets really clear on one to maybe three things, and you have that same circle, but you have one long line, and you are making exponential progress in one direction. So the same idea that goes with getting clear of where you want to be 3 years from now or a year from now, it helps kind of create that, like, in 3 years from now, what's actually possible for my business, and can we win, and does it make me a little nervous because we've never done it? Yes. But is it, I had somebody once say, I want to go from 5 million this year to, in 3 years, 100 million. I
Yeah.
was like, let's talk
Right.
about, is that normal in
Yeah.
your industry? Have you ever tried to do that? That's a really intense. I'm not sure he hit the goal. I never followed up with him. But the idea was, I actually pushed him to say, let's pick something more realistic, like 20 million, which is still a little unrealistic. I would rather see you say, I'm at 5 million and I want to go to 10 million in 3 years or 12 million in 3 years. That's realistic,
Hmm.
usually, depending on the industry, depending on what you're doing. So the same idea goes for this. So where do you start? In order for your team to care about it, you guys have to co-create, and or you create it and then hire the team to it. But it's this more heart-centered. We're going to make this impact in our community. And by the way, I want to hire everybody who loves recruiting to participate creating this impact. So that's like number one of
Mm-hmm.
the activities you got to do. And if 3 years feels too audacious, focus on the next year. What's the impact you want to make by the end of 2025? Well, we're almost halfway through, so I might encourage you to say by the end of 2026, just to get it all loaded and proper in your brain and figuring out and give you the space to actually plan it out. But let's get essential here and let's call our shot, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
do you want to go? And what's the plan? And let's put some measurables next to it. So I want to give a real example. I think your listeners would
Yeah.
be benefit rather from the general is to say, let's just make one right now. So your 3 year, we can call it mission. 3 years from now, we want to become known as a top recruiting agency that partners, I'm going to make up a number, a thousand employed with companies. Like how, I don't know the language you would use for that, right? So by the end of 2028, we could say
Mm-hmm.
we want to partner. Like that's what we want to do. So we want to become a top known recruiter in the Phoenix area next to 1,000 connections. So I have two measurables in there. We're a top recruiter, and then we have 1,000 connections made, right? Well, ultimately, what's that going to do? You can just generally talk about it. What's that going to do to our society? I mean, what's that impact? That's 1,000 people we get to have their lives changed because they get to be connected to potentially a dream job that they've always
Mm-hmm.
wanted,
Yeah.
more
Yep.
pay, whatever that looks like. So that's super cool. I mean, we get to participate in that. And then we break it down and we have some measurables. What would your revenue be if you hit that goal? What would your profitability be if you hit that goal? Do you care about Google reviews? Do you care about NPS, Net Promoter Score? If you don't know what it is, go Google it. It might be relevant to the work you're doing. It might not. Um, what about our I mean, obviously, 1,000 is one of our numbers. So, how are we going to
Mm-hmm.
track that? What does that look like? And so, you get kind of clear on these measurables. And then you begin to hire people who care about the same thing. They care about the impact on the community. They care about becoming and working only for the top agency, the top recruiting agency. Okay, what thoughts do you
Yeah.
have? Because I,
No,
I
I
can
think
see your.
that's no, I think that's right on. And that's what, I think a lot of recruiters try to do, right? You try to have that goal and you back it down. Like if it's a 3 year goal, then what does that look like for year two and
Hmm.
year one? But I love what you're saying about tie it to something bigger. And
Hmm.
it's almost like, you talk about like when you're thinking personally, I know I've thought about like, well, what's my why? Like, why am I
Mm,
doing this? It's not,
yeah.
if you ask people why they're in a particular career, right? Like I
Hmm.
asked you, it's not about money. Like we talk
Mm-mm.
about money or we think that it's a big factor, but when you really get down to it and keep asking yourself, why am
Hmm.
I doing this or who do I want to attract to my business?
Hmm.
The people that are really successful, I always think the money comes, but it's
Hmm.
that heart centered, like, why are
Yeah.
you doing this? Why are you so passionate? Why do you
Hmm.
stay up late at night, and solve problems for your clients and candidates? It's something more than that. So I love how you mentioned like tying it to something bigger and tying it to something that everyone in your company can get around so that you
Hmm.
can talk about that. It changes the dynamic of, you're not hitting your metrics. You didn't make enough
Yeah.
calls. You didn't,
Metrics
it's like, what's
become,
that bigger thing?
yeah, and the metrics become a clarity, not pressure, not micromanagement. And I want to push your listeners to go read the book BE 2.0 by Jim Collins. And specifically chapter 4, it talks about creating a company vision. And I talked about one piece of that company vision, which is what he calls a mission. And FYI, this is not a mission statement. This is not, let's put some fluffy words and then put it on our website. This is a clear call out on the destination you are going to align limited time, limited energy, and limited resources to. That's what we're doing here. We don't have all the time and energy and resources, which is why we don't want to be non-essentialist. We want to be
Mm-hmm.
essentialist. We want to get so clear. But in chapter 4, he talks about three pieces to vision. And he actually leads with core values, which if you don't have core values, this is your moment. I promise you, ChatGPT can help you if you just can't come up with them on your own. But if I could leave you with one thought, which is your core values have to be truly and authentic to who you are every second of every day. If they are not, if you use, I have had a client who said to me, well, we have a core value of being on time. And I kind of said, oh, tell me your problems without telling me your problems. And he
Hmm.
kind of laughed. I said, so tell me, are you on time every day? He goes, no, but my team needs to be. I said, there's no way your team is going to be on time if
Right.
you aren't on time, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so as a result, he's creating resentment among his team. I said, what if the core value actually was we genuinely care? And a side effect of genuinely care is that we are on time. And we don't
Mm.
have to call out, we are on time. It's actually that I hire people who genuinely care, and the ones who genuinely care are the ones who show up on time,
Right. And are
right?
considerate, right, of other
Are
people's time.
considerate.
So
Yes. So
love that.
I also
Hmm.
have known somebody that she felt that the core values had to be lived towards her as a leader, but she did not have to live them towards her team.
Mm.
And most of her team quit on her.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
couldn't deal with the distrust, and it was really frustrating, and I felt really bad. I that was not obviously my anticipation when we were creating the values, but this is how important living and breathing your core values are to you. If you do not live and breathe them, then we have chosen the wrong ones. So core
Hmm.
values of number one. Number two that Jim Collins talks about is purpose. Now, Stephanie Hitchins and the gospel according to Stephanie Hitchins is that I start with purpose, not core values. And the reason is I kind of like Simon Sinek, start with why. And what you're describing, actually, Sharon, is the why. When you were like, okay, so
Mm.
this is like my why. What am I doing? It's your purpose. And purpose is something that doesn't solve a problem. It is literally your reason for getting out of bed every single day and being willing to devote a portion of your life to a cause. Why am
Yeah.
I willing to do this? And at the end of the day, is the money great? Yes, but sometimes the money doesn't come, and I still love the work. I still love the piece that I'm doing, and I'm willing to sacrifice, and I'm willing to bet, and I'm willing to take risks in this space. So for me, I will share mine. Mine is I help, and I actually share it with Brett because he and I co-created stuff for the Elite Entrepreneurs Company, and I'm not leaving his company because there was anything wrong. It was because I wanted to work one on one and he wanted to do group. And great, let's do
Yeah.
it, but let's do it together parallel, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
that is, I help people realize their potential. And that sounds really generic, but I'm not talking about, it's not always through just business coaching. I have found that when I impact the leader of the business, it impacts every single employee that gets employed by this leader. And
Hmm.
so it's not just I help business owners realize their potential of what they could create in their business, and we could get, extensive there and list out all those things. But when the leader can get more aligned mind and heart, it changes how they show up for their team, right? They don't
Yeah.
react from a place of fear, they react from a place of strength and confidence. And that's going to impact how they show care and how they lead their team to win, right? With buy-in. So,
Hmm.
and then the last one is mission. So it's those three parts: purpose, core values, and then the mission, which we already talked about, is that destination. What do I want to accomplish? What's the place we want to go? What do we want to do? And then tightening that up and breaking that down into, okay, what do we need to do this year in order to reach our 3-year mission?
Hmm. I
So
love
this
that.
year, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking because a lot of times, let's say you have all of those things, right? I think, and you and I talked about this before we hit
Hmm.
record. A lot of it is like communicating and continually having those conversations with your team. And
Hmm.
one of the things, especially in recruiting, that I see a lot of leaders do is we do those monthly like one-on-ones.
Hmm.
And sometimes they're really effective, and sometimes, I've heard mixed reviews, right? Sometimes
Hmm.
from other recruiting leaders, sometimes they might think like, gosh, this is not my best usage of time. I'm busy. I've
Hmm.
got these other things going. And I know the recruiters sometimes feel that way as well. So what are some things that you can do? Because I can imagine like you feel that that's important, right? Having those one-on-ones, like what's the consistency that you feel that leaders should be having with their team, not only to see, okay, where are you going and like
Hmm.
what's the production, like what
Hmm.
where are you at right now as far as
Hmm.
your, personal goals and the company's goals, but communicating that vision and values and all of the
Hmm.
things that we just talked about.
Yeah, so I'm so glad you kind of brought this around because
Yeah.
this is a huge piece. It feels like we went from this big discussion around vision and then we honed in on this one tiny little detail. And actually, it's probably the most powerful little piece next to getting the clarity around the vision, getting clarity around purpose, core values, and mission. And what happens here is 100%, you were kind about it, not the best use of our time. I hear most say it's a waste of my time. So you totally said that very gently. When the reality is that it can be 100%. If you're not using it wisely, it feels micromanagey. It feels like a little icky. Like, I don't really want to be here. You don't really want to be here, but we're feeling like pressured to be here because, you know, whomever told us that we needed to do this, whatever that looks like. So the best way to make the best use of that time, and I can give you a 30-minute window of exactly how to use that time. You do a quick, hey, how's it going? I call positive focus. Just say something you're positive about, tweet style. The sun's out. I'm so grateful. It makes me feel good. I went on a walk today. I drank my favorite drink. Like whatever that looks like, you can just do, oh, or you have something grander. Like I graduated, I'm currently pregnant, literally, truly, 7 months pregnant. And so every week is like, oh my gosh, I'm another week pregnant. Like this is so happy. My baby's growing, right? So it could
Yeah.
even be more meaningful. Um, but then, I mean, that takes 3 minutes, really short. Okay, just quick. They give one, you give one, and you're one on one. And then you spend about 10 minutes asking about their life. What matters to them, right? Tell
Mm-hmm.
me, I remember you mentioning your mom was having some heart problems. Tell me what's going on with that. This is me as a leader. I want to know. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't heard you talk about that. How is your mom? What you're doing is you're depositing into their quote unquote emotional employee bank account and they feel cared for. What matters to you? So I'm going to use
Mm-hmm.
some real examples because I think that everybody learns by real examples rather than theory. We're going to go back to Brett. I love him. I'm not ashamed to talk about him and shout him from the rooftops.
He is great.
He's the best leader that I've ever
Yep.
had, and
Yep.
I navigated 7 years of infertility. So
Mm-hmm.
he was my leader for about 5 of those years. That's a lot of years to
Mm-hmm.
like watch somebody endure painful heartache, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was just so great about it. And he knew I never brought it to work. I never carried the weight of it because I was very loyal to him. I didn't want that to disrupt. But if I had to have a moment, I would step aside or I'd take my lunch and go do what I needed to. Maybe I was feeling sad. I just needed to talk to somebody or whatever that looked like. But there were times where I went periods without talking about it. And in our one-on-ones, he'd say, "Hey, it's been a minute. I haven't heard you. What's going on? I'd like an update." And I know that there can be some some people don't want to talk about it, some people do, but he knew me and he knew that it mattered to me and he knew that I was okay to talk about it with him at the time, right? And
Right.
so he was able to pull that and say, "Hey, look, I care about you." Right?
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, I showed up more loyal. I showed up because I knew he knew my heart. I knew he knew what I cared about. I knew he knew what mattered to me. And he wasn't just blanketing and like avoiding it. Now, let me be really clear. His job was never to solve my problem. And he knew it and I knew it. He just made space to
Right.
say, "I see you. I understand. And how can I help you?" And
Right.
that simple understanding, leaders get confused. They don't want to care about somebody's life because then what if they have to do something about it? That your job is not to solve their problems, and they should never ask that of you. But can you hold space and say, "Man, I see you. This is really hard. Do you need a little time?"
Right. And
Right?
I think having that time and scheduling it and carving out space to talk about that stuff, because usually
Yeah,
day to day, if you're in a
you're not
staff
getting
meeting,
it.
you're not going to
Hmm.
spend that one-on-one time, and it's
No.
really, you don't want to also open up, something that might be hard for someone to talk about. Like
Right.
you want to make sure that you carve out that time and it's scheduled so that they
And it's
know,
not rushed.
yeah, it's not
Yeah.
rushed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
sometimes the entire one-on-one may require that discussion. All
Mm-hmm.
right. Now, here's the thing. One of the things I coach on is we have to learn, and this is probably the hardest thing to learn as a business owner, is how to balance caring about the individual while caring about the cause, which is the company. We can't only care about the individual and not the cause. What happens to business? It
Mm-hmm.
tanks, right?
Yeah.
It becomes a mom and pop shop, it goes out the door. Okay. What happens when we only care about the cause? High turnover.
Mm-hmm.
People
Yeah.
don't feel cared for. There's no loyalty. There's betrayal. Like there's just so much. So when we are building our systems, the best system you can create and learn how to do is to care about this individual, what matters to them, while caring and holding them accountable to the cause of the company. So I'm going to give you another real live example. Okay. Again, it's with Brett, and he actually I my and I clarify out of respect for both my dads. I have my parents divorced, my mom and dad divorced, and they both remarried. And they both remarried before I was a year old, and I love my step parents so
Mm-hmm.
much. They are just fantastic. And my stepdad, I hate calling him stepdad because that feels informal because he was also my dad. And my
Mm-hmm.
stepmom is also my mom. I just
Mm-hmm.
happened to get four, and it's been really awesome.
That's
But my
awesome.
stepdad ended up getting sick unexpectedly on a Friday. And I was employed by Brett at that moment, and I called him and I said, "Hey, I'm rushing to the hospital in a different state where he is. It looks like his heart is functioning at 20%." And so
Wow.
all my siblings were all just going to just show him love, to help him rally, to like, the doctors think they can get him out of this. I think it's going to be okay. Brett said, "Okay,
Yeah.
just take the weekend. Let me know, what's going on." And I took the weekend and things took a turn. And he didn't pass, but he ended up having a stroke and ended up just really in an uncomfortable place because the medications to help the with the stroke heart, affected the heart, and the medications to help the heart affected the brain, which is part of the stroke. And so
Mm.
there was just kind of this, we were chasing time here.
Yeah.
And it was getting heavier. It wasn't like, oh, I think we're going to get through this. It was starting to feel like, oh, no, we're not sure. There's so much lack of clarity. So Monday came, and Brett, caring about the individual and the cause, he knew I had a full workload for the week.
Mm-hmm.
And he understood that my mind and my heart may not be fully in. And so he said, "Hey, do you have time to update me on what's going on? Do you have an hour?" He was very specific. That's caring about the cause,
Yeah.
because he's like, I know I'm asking for a lot right now, but can you give me 1 hour?"
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "I'd like to talk to you about what's going on and how I can support." So
Mm-hmm.
we hopped on the call. Hour felt like a lot, but I could give him an hour because on that call, I got to tell him everything that's going on. And he said, "Okay, listen, I want to just give you the week. But in order for me to do that, I need to take everything on your plate off. I need you to know what
Mm-hmm.
clients you're meeting up with. I need to know what you plan to talk to them about. So let's take the next 45 minutes and let's hand off everything to me for this week."
Mm.
And here's the deal. Did I feel a lack of care? No. Did I feel seen? Yes. Did I know he still cared about the cause? Absolutely. We are not going to let the business slide just because we don't know how to, and we don't have the tool to have the conversation to say, "Hey, I see you. Go do what you need to as a human
Right.
being, you know? And let's
Mm-hmm.
not cancel everybody. Let's serve them in a different way than they might have expected. And that's okay too." Right?
Yeah.
And what ended up happening, I mean, even throughout the week, I would text him, say, "Hey, how's that client? How did this go?" Not because I felt obligated, but because I knew they were being taken care of. And I knew he cared enough about me to let me be in the special place with my family, grieving and mourning, which my stepdad ended up passing away.
Oh,
And
sorry.
thank
Yeah.
you. I
Yeah.
never would have gotten that time if he just
Yeah.
said, "Well, I hired you for this job. You got to do the job." You
Mm-hmm.
know, how much time are
Yeah.
you going to take? It's already been 3 days. Where because he knew and he took the time to care and to understand the situation, He wasn't going to solve the problem. He wasn't there to give me therapy. He was just there to say, I see you. You probably
Right.
want to be there with them. It's probably hard
Right.
for you to be present with your customers. Can I take them from you? Can I
Right.
take your meetings? Can I take your And I was like, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so to give you that picture of creating how to care about the individual and the cause. This is caring about what matters to them while maintaining accountability on what
Mm-hmm.
they're there to do. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Totally. And just being proactive too, like being able
Hmm.
to, take care for you, but
Hmm.
also too to proactively say, let's get ahead of business stuff and just take it, off your plate so that you can focus on
Hmm.
family. And I'm sure that that relates and correlates to his mission and values,
Yes.
of the
Yes.
company and of his team and everything. So
Hmm.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's definitely
Um,
aligned with his core values,
yeah,
right? And if we go back
exactly.
to that,
Yes.
it's
Right.
it was not a surprise that he did that because he
Mm-hmm.
genuinely cares, and that's what he does, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I
Mhm.
love that.
So, can we
So
finish before we
yeah, I
jump in?
wanted,
I want to
yeah, I was
finish
saying
the
with the one-on-one, but I
yes.
love that. Thank you for
Okay.
sharing. And
Yes.
again, yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your
Yeah,
stepdad,
thank you.
but thank you for
Um,
sharing that.
yeah,
Um,
well, we make it real, right?
yeah, because it is. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
our work and our personal life intertwine, you know,
Hmm. Hmm.
especially when you have your own business too.
Yes, 100%.
They're aligned completely. Okay, so the one-on-one, 3 minutes up front to
Three
focus on
minutes.
like positive focus. We do
Yeah.
that too in
We're
our
Yeah, we're
team.
getting their head in the right space for
Mm-hmm.
creative thinking and problem solving. So if we
Yeah,
get them thinking positive, deliberately choosing, then from there, you have about 10 minutes on personal stuff. And
yeah.
like I said, 10 minutes is like almost more than enough because you're talking weekly. By the way, I don't
Yeah.
know if we talked about this. You should do a
Okay.
30-minute
Weekly.
weekly session. If you can't do 30 minutes, do 20, no less. Okay.
Okay.
But a
I'm
30
taking
minute
notes.
weekly yeah, go ahead. A 30-minute weekly session, a check-in, a one-on-one, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's a chance to check on how they're mentally doing, where they're at, what's going on in their life. Not solve their problem, just hold the space to care.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. Thank you for making me aware. Is there anything I can do to help you? They're probably going to say no. But because you're doing it so much, you only need 10 minutes. It's not like if you didn't do it very often, you might need an hour because they're going to tell you too much. Or maybe they're the employee that doesn't want to talk about it. And then you build this trust of, I know you will tell me when I need to know something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then
And
the
if you do it
second,
over time too,
yeah,
people get more comfortable and some of them, I think some people need more time to open up. So if
yes,
you're doing it
100%.
regularly, yeah,
Yeah.
it'll
Especially
flow.
if this is new in the business and
Mm-hmm.
you haven't done something like that before, this piece makes business owners very uncomfortable because they're like, I want to distance myself. So if I have to let them go, it's easier. Mm, no, because here's the deal, that makes you the judge and you're not the judge. The judge is your core values. The judge is your purpose. Are they living your core values? Are they living your purpose? Are they helping you reach the mission? Or are they causing you frustration in the company, lack of growth, right? The judge is also the second piece to the one-on-one, which is what are the three most important things they should be doing in their role to help grow the company?
Mm.
So, can you give me a role that you have that's common for your listeners? Like what's a role that they might have that we could even create just a little one right now just to give them an understanding of that.
Yeah. I mean, just definitely recruiting. So
Okay, so
if
just a
they get,
recruiter.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about the three most important things a recruiter can do for a company. Now, you would typically look at your bigger mission and say, okay, in order for us to reach 1,000, what does this recruiter need to do in the next quarter, right? Like how do we get there? How many per year versus how many per quarter? What does that look like? So let's just call our shot. Like what's realistic in a quarter for a recruiter to do? let's
As
let's
far
have
as
that be.
placements.
Yeah,
Um,
placements.
so this is going to vary. So I'm going to just
Yeah.
give you kind of an average. I would say, let's say just for the sake of our discussion, like it's 2 placements. Sometimes if you're dealing with high level executives, or it could be like two
Mhm.
placements a month. That's
Okay.
only
So two placements a
6.
month, so
Yeah.
six. That's okay.
Yep.
I really like that you said it could vary because this isn't going to be general for all recruiters,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is like what is needed by the or what is needed from the company in this specific position. And then based off of that position, we create what is needed. So let's say if they're doing high level recruitment, that's only six. I'm assuming if they were doing low level, we might be able to do more. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So for the first measurable, and they are agreeing to this. This isn't something that you're like, by the way, I'm Moses. I just came down with the Ten Commandments, so it is written, so it shall be done. You have to do six or else, right? It's more of like, hey, the company needs six. Do you feel like you could give two a month? What does that look like? Let's make sure you feel comfortable. They're probably going to say, yeah, I probably could do it. And then you spend the entire quarter and all your one-on-ones figuring out how to get those two per month. What are you doing? What are the activities that are taking place? Where do you need help? Where are you struggling? I'm here as now an idea partner to support you in reaching the goal. I'm not here to reach the goal for you. I'm here to make
Mm-hmm.
suggestions. Are you open? This is the phrase I use all the time. Are you open to some suggestions?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I am. If you just start telling them suggestions and they didn't give you permission, they might start feeling like, well, then you do the job. They might
Yeah.
start feeling frustrated by
Yeah.
it, right? What's another thing that we would hire them to do? So we've
Business
got
development.
okay, business development, and that's all about relationships and
Mm-hmm.
connecting with past clients, right, and future lead clients, right?
Right.
So how would you measure the success of that, either by month, by week, by quarter? What would that look like? How do we
Yeah.
know we've successfully business developed?
Yeah. And that those are the metrics that we will talk about.
Hmm.
Usually we do it, like, for example, in our office, we used to do it monthly,
Hmm.
before we changed our business model. So now it looks a little bit different. But for business development, it really comes down to being very, very consistent, like
Mm,
daily. So we always talk about in
okay.
our office, having 25 to 35 like reach outs per day.
Per day. Awesome.
Per day.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so now in our one-on-ones that we're having weekly, we're saying, how is that going? Where are
Mm-hmm.
you getting hung up? How can I support you? Do you feel like you're just repetitive? How can we get creative? Let's idea partner. And I always say, let's get weird with it. Let's get as weird as we can. What's the craziest thing we could do in a connection,
Yeah.
And that would make them respond, that could be fun and create a great dynamic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're spending time in the last 15 minutes of your 30-minute one-on-one on the problems that they're navigating in reaching the goals, or you're
Mm-hmm.
discussing their wins of reaching the goals. This is pure accountability. You are not micromanaging. They are reporting to you. They are asking you for help. So this is important for you as a leader to
Mm-hmm.
say to them, this is your time to use me to win. This is your time to get help from me and support from me. So we're going to be brainstorming like the whole time. There are times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm hitting every goal. We're doing really great, you know? And then there are
Mm-hmm.
times that I'm like, I don't want to talk about the personal stuff today. I need the entire time to solve a
Yeah.
problem I can't figure out. Right. And so it
Mm-hmm.
becomes this connection. So first and foremost is making sure that they know that that second half, that's holding them to the cause, right? We care about the
Mm-hmm.
individual, but by the way, we have to measure how are you performing? Why aren't you performing? What are you getting hung up in? No judgment. This makes the metric the judge.
Yeah.
The metric is you need to hit two a month and you're only getting one. So I'm not even the bad guy.
Right.
This is like we just get to work through it. We get to be a team, right?
Right. And I think the cadence, I think that's,
Hmm.
a big thing. So if you're doing that every single week
Hmm.
versus doing it, I think sometimes firm owners do it once a month or once a
Yeah.
quarter,
I don't need
it
time
gets
with
to be
them. They're
really too
fine.
long.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I think, yeah, doing that, chunking it down, and then people know what to expect too. If it's the
Hmm.
same cadence every single time and the same
Exactly.
things that you're touching on, that's
Hmm.
amazing.
Well,
Yeah.
and then I would encourage you to prioritize it. So let's say you're going on vacation as a leader for a full week. So you need to say to your team member, hey, I'm going on vacation for a full week. That means we're not doing our one-on-one. Do you want to double up on time? I would love for you, maybe if you'd be willing to just email me a report of what's going on. I don't want you to think it's not important to me because then they feel like, oh, we're not just doing this for checklist,
Right.
especially for business owners that might travel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance the reporting? How do you balance the weekly commitment? And I promise you, this piece is like a magic tool because when you start to hire more people to your vision, to your purpose, your core values, and your mission, which FYI, big pointer for recruiters if they're like, I can hire it for everybody else, but how do I? You got to hire them to go reach the goal, the mission. Like we got it. We're hiring to build and create this outcome but
Mm-hmm.
while living the core values, and aligned to the same thing we all care about, that purpose, right? And so
Yeah.
from there, once you do that, now when we implement this one-on-one, it's a constant discussion about what they're doing to contribute to the bigger mission, to the bigger goal, to the annual goals, to quarterly goals, and it's easier to tie it all together. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. Stephanie, you're gonna have to come back. There's so much that we could talk
Thank
about
you.
and just breaking it down and, seeing it from a different perspective.
Mhm.
I think anyone that's listening, whether you've been doing this for, years or you're just starting out, I think that they can gain something really, really special from what you just shared. So
Thank you.
thank you. Now, where can people find you? Would you say LinkedIn or, because I'll put everything in the show notes, but
Yes, thank you for asking. LinkedIn, and you can email me directly at stephanie.hitchins@gmail.com. Although, look at the show notes because
yeah.
people do spell my name wrong,
Okay.
my last name specifically. And LinkedIn is a great place. I don't have a website. I know, shocker in this day and age. But every all the work that I do is usually through referral or the right connections. And so, if you have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. And if you feel like you need somebody to just, hey, can you just take a look at the way I've organized this? I'm the kind of person that's like, yes, I would love to help you. Take a look at that and go from there. So.
Yeah. Would you say, because I know we talked about six-figure business owners, like who do you feel would be someone like as far as where they're at in their business,
mm,
a good fit for what you offer with your coaching?
Oh, you're so nice to ask that question. So usually it's a person, a business owner who has been navigating the seven-figure growth for some time. If they get there pretty quickly and they're hungry enough for it, okay, but their pains aren't as strong. And so when I start to talk to them, they're like, I don't even understand why one-on-ones are that big of a deal, you know? And then they go through turnover and, that kind of thing. So then they see the one-on-ones and they're like, whoa, Sharon, you've been doing
Mm-hmm.
this for a while. So you're seeing the
Mm-hmm. And even
value, right?
yeah, definitely got some really good nuggets from that.
Right,
So,
right. So,
yeah.
the biggest thing is when they're looking at their culture and they're feeling like it's in disarray, or like they've put a culture in place, but nobody's living into it. When they're looking to develop themselves as a leader, like I am just tapped out on how to serve my team. I don't know. I've done everything I can, and I just feel like we're hitting roadblock after roadblock with the humans in the business. If your growth has stalled in revenue, that's a big one. And then another one is the people stuff. If you're having turnover, you're trying to hire people. One of the things I do is I kind of roll up my sleeves. The one-on-one experience is that I roll up my sleeves and I get in weekly in your business and I look at everything from a 30,000 foot view, zoomed in to in the trenches with you to figure out, okay, what's the plan? Where are we going? And then how do we align again that limited time, energy, and resources to go reach the goals for growth? And so I help implement systems. So maybe you're like, man, I can do this one-on-one system, but I don't know what else to do. I don't have the other pieces to the puzzle. That's where I come in and I help you create everything that works for your business, and then I hold you accountable to making that happen. So it's really fun because I'll give you one example. I worked with an
Okay.
endodontic office, and had um, they were taking emergency slots. So with endodontists, you have a lot of pain with your patients.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were opening up and they were taking emergency slots every night from 5 to 8 p.m., something pretty crazy.
Wow.
They were not home with their families. They were working like 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. almost every night. And there was a little desperation, and their revenue was barely almost to 2 million. And or it was just at 2 million, something like that, but they couldn't break past it. They had been there a while. And when I was looking at all the systems, I'm thinking, why are you saying yes and giving so much of your time away? We need to tighten this up, get really clear about how we're going to organize the entire day for the endodontists. And then let's only give 2 emergency time slots per dentist or endodontist per week. So
Yeah.
that's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, we're gonna lose clients. Oh my gosh, we're gonna lose relationships with our partners and the other dentists in the area. And I said, or it's gonna align everything so clearly that you're gonna be able to reach greater goals and actually reach more people. So then we educated the entire team on the new plan. We put the new system in place, and they just informed me that they almost hit, I think it was like 3.5 million, something like that. I can't remember the exact, maybe it was, but it was not just because of that system. It was all the other pieces, but that was one
Mm-hmm.
simple thing that they couldn't see. And we tightened that up, and all of a sudden things started flowing smoother, and we hired the
Yeah.
right team. And it was just all of the pieces just started to flow. So in working with me, I look for people that have big vision, that are willing to check themselves and kind of be able to see I don't have all the tools and I need the tools, that are willing, they look at investing in leadership development and their growth as equal in value to a marketing effort or a sales effort, because
Mm-hmm.
if they don't, they know it's going to sacrifice the business growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
so and then on top of that, I'm looking for the right person to connect with. We have to share eye to eye views on core values and things like that. I want to fit with them, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I
and you
want to be able
pour
to
so
model.
much into each of your
Yes, have to
clients,
be
and
so
I've
aligned.
seen that
Yeah.
firsthand. So,
Yeah.
all
Thank
right,
you.
good. I'll put everything in the show notes. And thank you, Stephanie, for coming on. It was so
Oh,
great.
you know what? I wanted to mention
What?
one more thing, Sharon. I
Yeah,
am starting a group where people can come in a group setting to learn and spend time and ask questions, like on Zoom. So if
love
anybody's interested
that.
in that, it's definitely a lower fee and it's a little bit more accessible. So message
Mm.
me too if you're interested in something like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. Okay, I'm going to put everything in the show notes.
Thank
So
you.
thanks, Stephanie, and thanks everyone for joining us on another episode. And we will talk next week and talk soon. Thanks for joining me today. I would love to hear what resonated with you or suggestions for a future show. Connect with me on LinkedIn and be sure to sign up for our monthly newsletter. All the links are in the show notes. And if you or someone you know is an amazing recruiter and is looking to join my brokerage recruiting model for more time, freedom, and money, let's chat.